Watching Charter Local Edition, I'm Brad Pomerance in the nation's capital today. We are joined by Greg Walden. He is a member of the United States Congress representing the state of Oregon. There's been a lot of focus on the drought in California, yet, sir, the Pacific Northwest is suffering as well. And we're just hearing reports of it. You represent significant portions of Oregon, actually geographically very significant portions.
2/3 of the state.
2/3 of the state. So give us a sense on the ground, what are we seeing in your beautiful state?
You know, one of the worst droughts we've seen in decades, probably back to the 1970s, maybe some further back than that. And it stems in part from the lack of snowpack we had this year. I think it's 9% of average in a lot of the Cascade Mountains. And so we've got fire conditions coming on earlier. We've had some lightning strikes and fires starting.
This is Oregon. This is where there's rain all year round.
There's two Oregons.
There's two Oregons,
there's sort of
right.
the west side gets a lot of rain, and then there's my part of the state, which is 2/3, and a pretty high desert plateau, but even there we're significantly low in our reservoirs with no snowpack to run off. Now we did get some rain, which has been helpful, not enough. It's not the Texas sort of rain where you get 8 inches over the entire state on average. That would have filled up all the reservoirs in California and Oregon multiple times over.
Let it be.
But it is, so it's an issue for us.
So your governor has declared emergencies in several counties. She may be declaring emergencies in other counties. Appropriate?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, you look for this to come. This is pretty standard operation. And it's unfortunate, obviously, for our agricultural interests, for habitat, for, you know, stream flows, all the things we care about in the Northwest.
And so is it time to start seeing federal intervention? I mean, we know
There'll
that
be some federal assistance as there is when there's a disaster of some measure. We really need to look at how do we maximize the use of the water that we have.
Do you have a vote coming? I hear the ringing. I think you'll be okay. Okay, we'll be good. So.
And so, I mean, there are the traditional disaster programs. But I think it's important that we look to how we conserve water, how we maximize its use to get efficiencies, and look for additional storage where we can.
So what efforts are being made in Oregon? Because California has been so singularly focused on this issue, and rightfully so. But look, Oregon and Washington are suffering as well.
They are, and so there are some limited projects underway or being considered. Store water underground in the winter, pump storage in out. In some areas, there's look at can you expand reservoir capacities. In some areas, it's pretty limited. The costs and the fight to site a new storage area is pretty huge.
Oh, no doubt.
And there aren't that many places we haven't built out.
And when you look at above ground storage, these are great long-term solutions, but Oregon needs relief today.
Right.
And so
there's not much you can do. I mean, you can't manufacture water.
Right. So what's being done? Your ag friends,
They're cutting back on the amount of acres planted. They're kind of risking it, if you will, in some areas where they're sort of hoping for rain. A lot of our ag land on the east side is dry land to begin with. So it's high desert plateau, it's dry land wheat. But we also have a lot of irrigated agriculture as well. But so it's a mix. It's not all irrigated. But where it is, they're stressed right now. They're concerned. Will they get through the whole season? You know, if we were to have a rainy summer, if we were to get an extra dump or two of rain in August or July, we might be able to eke through this. But the long and the short of it, you've got acreage idled, and people just realize this isn't going to be a great year.
And how is that impacting your constituents? What is being done?
It certainly hurts the economy in those areas that are affected. There won't be the harvest levels. In some cases, there won't be harvest at all. We also are dealing with a problem that occurred for a couple of days. I think last November, there was a deep freeze early and killed a lot of vegetation. You know, my own shrubs in my yard in Hood River suffered deeply. Yes. I get to replant them.
Oh my, could be enjoyable. Could be enjoyable, right?
But some of the cherry orchards suffered damage that could, in some cases, they have to replant the trees because it killed them. In other cases, may have hurt the wood back to where it could be a year or 2 or 3 before they produce cherries again. It just depends upon where you were and all of that. So there was some real damage done because of this deep freeze. Then you had the drought after that.
You mentioned the risk of wildfire, which is significant, especially when the land is dry and Oregon well-wooded, well-forested. We've talked about this in the past. What is the state doing? What is the federal government doing on the question of potential wildfires?
You know, it's more of a federal government issue than state. 55% of the land mass in part of Oregon I represent is under federal management
BLM?
or lack of management and Forest Service. And so a lot of that is sort of high desert. A lot of it's timber. And in the federal forest land, not enough is being done. It costs you 4 times as much to fight fire as to go in and do treatment to get the forest in balance. They're overstocked. They're disease-ridden. You get a drought, they become more susceptible to disease and
beetles.
Bugs. Exactly. So then you get more fuel load. And the Forest Service, because of the laws, rules, litigation, really has their hands tied.
I've spoken with some members from Montana, and they are looking at revising federal rules as it relates to timber. They're looking at trying to prevent what's been called predatory law litigation as a way to allow reasonable timber management. Do you have a sense of how that legislation's marching forward and whether it could help? Slowly.
Not fast enough.
Okay.
And I've been part of those efforts over the years, helped write the Healthy Forest Restoration Act, which became law, which allows for an expedited process, still allowing appeal, but not endless appeal.
I see.
For some of these groups that want to stop active management, the appeal process has become an ATM. I mean, they can appeal, and under the Equal Access to Justice Act, with the complexity of the laws, they generally win on some point, and then they get a payment. And so it just perpetuates an industry of litigation that gets a big payout, almost no matter what happens. I had the chief of the Forest Service several years ago admit to me that even when they win at the Forest Service, sometimes the court will order a payment for legal expenses for the plaintiffs. That's just plain wrong. And the agencies can't even tell us how much taxpayer money is going out the door. They haven't completed their report since 2004. And so we're just trying to get to the point where they'll tell us, what's this costing us? We know what it costs us on the ground. Loss of habitat, destruction of our watersheds, loss of jobs, impoverished communities, and timber stands that go up in flames, and especially in a year like this. We've already had lightning strikes and early fire season. It's burning in Oregon as if it were August, and yet it's June.
I want to talk about another element as it relates to water, and that's what's known as the Waters of the United States rule. It's become fairly controversial, and yet there's bipartisan agreement in large part on the notion that the EPA may have overstepped when
have overstepped.
I'm just being a neutral journalist. I'm just being a neutral journalist.
I don't have to be. They completely overstepped. The Clean Water Act started out as managing navigable waterways, like rivers. Okay, the Columbia River, you know, pick a major river. Then it moved beyond that, and now it's down to mud puddles, irrigation ditches, intermittent streams that dry up. I don't see many ships going up and down. It is a federal government grab of water in the West.
So for those that are taking the position you're taking, the good news is there's bipartisan agreement that the EPA may have gone too far, as you might have gone, has gone too far.
It has clearly gone too far.
So what now? What now?
So we have legislation to roll it back. It's been approved by the House. We will try and cut them off at the pocketbook, which is about the only way you get an agency's attention in Washington.
Let's talk about let's talk about your friends in the Senate, because I understand the House has moved forward. There are bipartisan bills percolating in the Senate. But where are we?
Well, we've done our business in the House.
Just
I'm not worthy to understand how the upper chamber operates. But the long and the short of it is they need to step up, because this will have a huge negative impact on people's lives and the economy of our rural communities. And unnecessarily so, sets up a whole new framework of litigation. And if you can link from that pothole to that intermittent stream thousands of feet away, you can create a macrame net here of regulation.
I like the metaphor. That
will shut down agriculture. It will shut down public access. It is another outrageous federal government overreach. It's completely unnecessary.
And on that note, he is Greg Walden, member of the U.S. Congress. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter Local Edition.